Who is worthy to be counted among the extraordinary? One who lives with integrity, does what is right, and recognizes the truth, whose tongue utters no slander, who does others no evil, who does not reproach neighbors, but feels scorn for those who act thoughtlessly, and cherishes others who behave honorably. Unwavering, this person will keep a promise, even at personal expense, and will never lend money with ruthless intent or take a bribe to harm the innocent. Whoever lives this way will be remembered always. We have come together this morning to celebrate the life and to mourn the loss of Ruth Ness. May her memory be for a blessing. Even as we grapple with the pain of her physical absence, we recall the gift of her presence in our lives. We are thankful for all that was good and true in the way that she lived, and for the memories which will endure among all those who knew and loved her. It is a daunting and ultimately impossible task to attempt to capture the depth and complexity of a human soul using the tools of the written or spoken word. This would be true even if one were to write a book-length study of a person's life, and how much the more so in the minuscule amount of time that we are given at this poignant and difficult moment. And yet, we are driven by our human need for meaning and continuity to make the attempt nonetheless. So let us acknowledge that today is the merest beginning of the process of distilling the legacy that Ruth leaves to us, a process that will continue over the coming weeks and months, and for many of us, last far into the future. Reflections on Ruth's life will be offered from several different perspectives this morning. I will begin with a general overview, and then we'll hear from several of her family members who will add some detail from their own unique vantage points. Mi ha'ish hechafetz chaim ohev yamim lirot tov. Who is the person who delights in life, who loves each day, always seeking what is good? Ruth Ness was born on November 1st, 1928, into a hard-working family of second-generation American Jews in Cleveland. Her father, David, was a successful attorney, and her mother, Leah, a devoted kindergarten teacher with expertise in progressive education, grounded in the Montessori method. She also had an older brother, Paul, who was 5 years her senior. Ruth had a relatively happy childhood despite the challenges that the country was going through at the time, first with the Great Depression and then with the Second World War. She thrived in the context of her bustling Glenville neighborhood, filled with small businesses run by Jewish families who had come to the U.S. within the previous generation. She and her friends would enjoy the many local opportunities for fun and adventure, such as going to the movies, biking down to the cultural gardens on East Boulevard, and at times heading all the way to the shores of Lake Erie, or in the winter, going to ice skate on the frozen pond near Wade Park. The one great source of pain for Ruth during this time was the discovery that her mother had MS. The disease began to limit her mother when Ruth was in elementary school, but by the time she started high school, her mother was fully wheelchair-bound. Due to her mother's illness, both Ruth and her brother Paul ended up taking on certain household responsibilities sooner than was the case for children in other families. But this in no way lessened their esteem for their mother. On the contrary, their esteem for her grew. Ruth credited her mother with introducing her to the joys of artistic appreciation, including dance and piano lessons at the Cleveland Institute of Music, and frequent visits to the art museum to deepen her understanding of painting and sculpture. These experiences were embraced enthusiastically by Ruth, and remained centrally important to her throughout the rest of her life. Another life lesson that came from both of her parents had to do with the importance of finding meaningful ways of investing one's time, whether in a paid or volunteer setting. Ruth also embraced this teaching with her customary vigor, as she decided at the age of 14 to seek out her first job, which turned out to be working at a hosiery store selling ladies' stockings, and where she was frequently the employee who won the contest for the most sales in a given week. The owners of the store were so impressed with her that they kept her on until she graduated from college and got married nearly 7 years later. From an early age, it was clear that Ruth was a people person. She enjoyed meeting and getting to know people from many different backgrounds. And she was committed to maintaining vital relationships with family members and friends from many different stages and places in her life. She valued those relationships for their own sake, but sometimes they yielded additional benefits as well. That was the case with one of her female college friends, who had met and married a young man named Charles Ness, who it turned out had a younger brother named Arthur. When Arthur approached his brother and new sister-in-law for a recommendation on any nice young women that he might ask out, Ruth's name was at the top of the list. Within 3 months of their first date, they were engaged, and within another 3 months' time, they were married. They got back from their honeymoon just in time for Ruth to attend her graduation ceremony from Mather College on the campus of Western Reserve University. Following Ruth's graduation, the couple spent the next several years living in a few different cities, including Columbus, Cincinnati, and Morristown, New Jersey, as different professional opportunities opened up for Arthur. It was during this period when they welcomed children into their family, first Alan in 1953, and 5 years later, Leah in 1958. Not long after Leah was born, and in the middle of Alan's kindergarten year, Ruth and Arthur returned to the Cleveland area where they would spend the rest of their lives, and they settled into their new home on Raymont Boulevard in Cleveland Heights. While her children were young, Ruth devoted the lion's share of her time and energy to raising them, drawing on her own mother's example as she focused on enriching their lives with an appreciation for the arts and conveying the wisdom that she had gleaned from her own parents and also from her life experience. But even then, in the late 1950s, as she and Arthur were living in what Ruth later referred to as a traditional marriage, Ruth knew that at some point she would want to go beyond the role of wife, mother, and homemaker and pursue her own professional interests and growth. She and a group of her women friends started a book club, and some of the first books that they read together were the provocative publications coming out of the first wave of feminism. The outlook that Ruth encountered in these writings resonated with her own intuition about the evolving roles of men and women in society, and to his credit, Arthur was incredibly supportive of Ruth's desire to develop herself and grow in ways that were not typical for women at that time. At first, the form that this development took was primarily in volunteering for organizations such as Hadassah and Pioneer Women, both of which were Jewish women's organizations focused heavily on learning about and supporting the fledgling state of Israel. Even in a volunteer setting, though, Ruth's natural organizational abilities came to the fore, and she invariably ended up in leadership roles in the local chapters that she served. But then, once Alan and Leah were both in school, Ruth felt drawn to pursue a career of her own in a more categorical way. And over the course of the next 30 years, she would successfully pursue professional opportunities that were both meaningful to her and at which she excelled. These roles ranged widely, from teaching the art of writing to local high school students, to teaching English as a second language to immigrants from the Middle East and the former Soviet Union, to working for and ultimately directing the program for senior adults at the JCC. In each of these roles, Ruth's natural friendliness and interest in people resulted in her making connections that extended beyond their professional connection, both in time and space. One of the most poignant examples of these connections involved her work with one of her ESL students from Iran, who, Ruth had noticed, always wore a Star of David around her neck. Their connection, both in the classroom and their shared Jewish identity, eventually inspired Ruth and Arthur to take a trip to Iran, and while there, they were hosted by the parents of this student in the city of Shiraz. They relished the unique opportunity they had to attend Shabbat services at an Iranian synagogue, and afterwards to return to their host's home to enjoy a traditional Persian Shabbat dinner. Pursuing a career of her own was not the only way that Ruth sought to broaden herself. She was committed to continuing her education as well. She had received a degree in history as an undergrad at Mather, but once she started teaching high school students, she decided to go back to school and get her master's degree in education, with a specialization in the teaching of reading. And as if her commitment to being an engaged parent as well as a professional educator were not enough, Ruth continued to make time for various volunteer activities, of which one of her longest standing was her service on the board of the Cleveland Heights University Heights Library System, which included, not surprisingly, a year in the role of president. And more recently, she achieved a similar level of involvement as a leader in the Friends of the Aaron Garber Library Association. While Ruth pursued educational experiences in her early years as a way to enhance her professional skills, she also maintained an appreciation for learning for its own sake, for the expansion of perspective and understanding of the world that it provided. There were many ways that she found to embed such learning in her life, no matter what else was going on. These included reading books on her own and as part of several different book clubs, maintaining a regular subscription to publications such as the New York Times and the New Yorker magazine, being an active participant in organizations like the Cleveland Council on World Affairs, and later in life, enrolling regularly in classes at the Siegel College of Jewish Studies. But perhaps the most exciting way that Ruth, along with Arthur, found to expand their horizons was in finding time to travel abroad. They were able to take a number of wonderful trips to places such as China, Iran, and various European countries, but the trips that made the strongest impression on Ruth were their visits to Egypt and Israel, which she wanted more than anything else to visit again. In every aspect of her life, Ruth showed herself to be a passionate, engaged, and formidable presence. She nurtured a most loving and fulfilling partnership of 56 years with her husband, Arthur. She was a dedicated, caring, and encouraging parent to Alan and Leah, and also, after they each married, to their respective spouses, Margaret and Ron. She took great delight and pride in her grandchildren, Andrea, Fred, and Nathan. She cultivated ongoing relationships with many friends and relatives, both in person and through her extensive written correspondence, in hard copy and more recently of the electronic variety. She had friendships with people from every stage of her life, of whom one of the most cherished was Leo Tabachman, whose companionship and support over the past decade was a great gift. At the age of 88, her mind remained sharp. Her energy level continued to make an impression on others, and this despite the medical challenges she had been facing in recent years. She modeled a life that achieved great culture and sophistication without any haughtiness or ostentatiousness. She managed to combine and integrate the qualities of strength and confidence with humility and curiosity. She was a passionate advocate for and devotee of the communities to which she belonged, both the local Cleveland community and the Jewish community on all levels. She had a true zest for life, and everyone who spent time with her felt it and was nurtured by it. Just over a week ago, on New Year's Eve, Ruth rang in the new year with friends until 1 a.m. As she approached her upcoming surgery with confidence that the procedure would be successful, she nonetheless took the time to speak the following words just a few days ago to her daughter Leah. She said, "If anything happens, I want you to know that I've had a good long life, and I have no regrets." Mi ha'ish hechafetz chayim ohev yamim lirot tov. Who is the person who delights in life, who loves each day, always seeking what is good? To this question posed by Psalm 34, surely the life of Ruth Ness is one inspiring answer. Zichrona livracha, may her memory always be for a blessing. This time I'd like to invite her son Alan to come forward.
Life can be shocking. You may be shocked when I say that I am a Jew and a Buddhist, but my Buddhist side may have something important to say. In the Buddhist tradition, we are trained in the 4 stages of life: birth, leading to old age, then sickness and death, as every being experiences it. But when Ruth died during a voluntary surgery, it was shocking. It does not fit exactly into this original scheme. But nonetheless, here we are. I want to reminisce a little bit. When I was a teenager, struggling with the meaning of life, my mother used to quote her mother, who quoted the psychologist William James. "You must open the windows of your consciousness." This showed a tremendous trust in me and encouragement to find my own path in life. Maybe that led to my being a Buddhist. You may be shocked that Buddhists believe in decorum. My mother represented this throughout her life, proper way to live. And she told the story of being invited to prom in high school, and she accepted the invitation from the boy who asked her. A little bit later, another boy, who she liked a bit more, asked her to prom. And her mother told her that no, you must honor your original commitment. That is the proper way to do things. And I think she displayed that sense of what is appropriate throughout life and taking the high road, not the selfish or the easy road in her life. My sister Leah reminded me that a few times she said, in a previous life, maybe I was a riverboat gambler. She had a real zest and vigor in her interior life. And it looks like she rolled the dice and took the chance recently. But we know that taking the chance, shocking results can occur. So losing my mother in this way is shocking, but it is time for me to integrate what has happened into my life, and to follow her example and proper decorum, and all the things that she represented that Rabbi Steve said so well. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. We'll now hear from Ruth's daughter, Leah.
Thank you all for coming today, not to mourn my mother's passing, but to celebrate her life, because that's what she would have wanted. Because it was a life well lived. It was a full life, lived with zest. I've been thinking about the lessons that she taught me that I could learn from the example of how she chose to live. For example, how she persevered after her own mother died at the age of 63. How she had a successful marriage for 56 years with my father. How she enjoyed so much working outside the home and helping people. How she adored and loved to travel, have adventures, meet new people, see new things. How she loved to be with her friends and socialize, and you all know that, I'm sure, very well, with her book clubs, her bridge clubs. How she appreciated the visual and performing arts, introducing the whole world of art to me as a child that I still love. How she supported, with my father, the Jewish community in Cleveland in many, many ways. How she loved to read. There were always so many books in our house. And stay current of world news. I would go over there, we'd sit, she'd always have the New York Times on the table, we were reading articles together, discussing world events. How she loved her family and her grandchildren. How she was the wise matriarch of our family. She was the glue that held it all together. How she had no regrets about anything, and how she was my rock. These are some of the life lessons she taught me. She loved absolutely everything that life had to offer, and she took full advantage of it. And so in her memory, perhaps we too can do something that will bring us joy, because that's what she would want. Whether it's going out to dinner with friends, enjoying a concert or a movie, taking a class to learn new things, discussing the latest news, or just reading a good book. In this way, her spirit and zest will live on in us. And I'd like to just finish with a quick poem. When all that's left is love. When I die, if you need to weep, cry for someone walking the street beside you. You can love me most by letting hands touch hands and souls touch souls. You could love me most by sharing your goodness and multiplying your acts of kindness. You could love me most by letting me live in your eyes and not on your mind. And when you say Kaddish for me, remember what our Torah teaches. Love doesn't die, people do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Leah.
Thank you.
For our concluding sharing this morning, I'd like to call one of Ruth's 3 grandchildren, Nathan, to come forward.
So upon learning of the passing of my grandmother, like many of you probably were, I was very surprised. And I'm certain that all of you are aware of how active and involved she was with the greater community and how much she loved all of you. She was always there for us, and we were always there for her. We helped Grandma with her shopping when it was too slippery for her to go out, and with household chores, such as burned out light bulbs that were too high for her to reach, or malfunctioning computer equipment that needed to be fixed. And she was there for us if one of us was ill or needed emotional support. Grandma advised me and supported me with all of my educational endeavors, attending my middle school, high school, and undergraduate awards ceremonies, graduations, and concerts, and I loved having her for all of them. When I started medical school and no longer lived in Cleveland, she visited, phoned, and wrote me so that we could stay connected. In fact, I received the last birthday card that she sent me on the day before she passed away, which was very heartbreaking. It's hard to believe how an individual who had such a large presence in my life and that of my family could be taken from us so quickly and without warning. Two of Grandma's most profound wishes were to attend my cousin Andrea's wedding later this year and my graduation from medical school a few years from now. We are all very deeply disappointed that this will no longer happen. But today I'm trying to focus on the time that I did have with her, 23 years of love and support from a cherished family member, which is something precious that not all are granted. In truth, Grandma was my third parent. I will never forget her, and she will be dear to me for the rest of my life, and I hope you all feel the same.
Thank you so much, Nathan, and all of you for your beautiful words of remembrance. I'd like to conclude this section with the following poem. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember them. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember them. In the opening of the buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them. In the blueness of the sky and in the warmth of summer, we remember them. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember them. So long as we live, they too shall live, for they are now a part of us as we remember them. Please rise for the chanting of the memorial prayer. El Malei Rachamim Shochen Bamromim Hamsei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei HaShechina B'malot Kedoshim Utehorim Kizohar Harakia Masihirim Et Nishmat Ruth Miriam Bat David V'Leah Shalcha leolama Ana bal harachamim Hastireha beseter kenafecha leolamim Utzror bitzror hachayim Et nishmata Adonai hu nachalata v'tanuach b'shalom al mishkava v'nomar Amen. God filled with mercy, dwelling in the heavens' heights, bring proper rest beneath the wings of your Shekhinah, your divine presence, amid the ranks of the holy and the pure, illuminating like the brilliance of the skies, the soul of Ruth Miriam, the daughter of David and Leah, who has gone to her eternal place of rest. May you who are the source of mercy shelter her beneath your wings eternally and bind her soul among the living, that she may rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. Please be seated. Following the conclusion of today's service, burial will take place at the Beit Olam Cemetery on the corner of Richmond and Chagrin. And following that, we'll begin today's observance of Shiva, which will continue until 4 p.m. today. Shiva will pick up again tomorrow, late afternoon at 5 and conclude at 7 with a Shiva Minyan service at 5:30 tomorrow. And then on Wednesday, the final day of Shiva will start at 11 in the morning and conclude at 1 in the afternoon. Those who would like to make a contribution in Ruth's memory are suggested to send that contribution to Mather College of Case Western Reserve University or to Kol Halev. Thank you.